Hello, and welcome to Spotlight On, the podcast that brings together business leaders, entrepreneurs, and experts covering a range of topics. I'm Nicholas Barton, founder and CEO of the Barton Partnership. We're an award-winning executive recruitment and consulting solutions firm providing permanent search and independent consulting services across strategy, sustainability and M&A, data and analytics, and transformation and change. In today's podcast, I'm excited to be joined by Josh White, co-founder and CEO of Cano Water, a fully recyclable alternative to single-use plastic bottles. Josh began his career in events, marketing and sales. He launched his own company, High Frequency Events, in 2011 and successfully managed the London-based business for 4 years. Cano Water was created in 2015 after an eye-watering trip to Thailand, which I'm sure we'll hear about. And Josh has been awarded Forbes 30 Under 30 and named one of the coolest people in food and drink. We're excited to have him here today. Josh, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Nick.
So let's start with this. From living room made prototypes and DJ sets to Forbes 30 Under 30 and over 40 million cans of water sold globally, which is unbelievable. Tell us about your background and the inspiration for Cano Water.
So yeah, as you said, Nick, I was a DJ. I still am a DJ here and there, but essentially there was no plan for Cano Water. I always say that if I was going to write a book, it would be called The Accidental Entrepreneur, because I definitely wasn't the type of person that thought that they had entrepreneurialism in the DNA. It was sort of like something that we stumbled upon, to be completely honest with you. Good friends, went to Thailand, saw how bad the plastic problem was. And, you know, I credit a lot to my ADHD, because I think that the way that my mind works has always been very different. If 1,000 people go in one direction, I'll always go in the other direction. I'm very inquisitive, always looking for the new best thing. And I always say that, 99% of people just would have seen the plastic pollution and forgotten about it. But for the three of us, three soul seekers, always looking to go outside of our comfort zones and explore different avenues, we didn't forget about it and did copious amounts of research around how it's happening, why is it happening, how are the biggest companies in the world, like your Evians and your Coca-Colas, allowing it to happen. And there must be a better alternative. And when looking at all the different kinds of packaging, saw that aluminium is by far the most recyclable material on the planet. So it made sense. I read something yesterday, and I've always actually spoken about this around naivety and how important naivety is, especially going into something that you have got no experience in. Always find the holes, and where everyone in that category will tell you, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. Naivety and the brain will just tell you, you can. You can always see areas that other people can't through naivety. So basically through naivety, we were the first people in the world to put water in a can. I don't think we were the first people to ever come up with the idea, but I think that everyone previous that had come up with the idea probably thought it was a stupid idea and never did it, until three friends with no experience, 22 years old, happened to stumble upon it and actually thought, you know what, we're actually going to make this happen.
So taking a step back, you saw the plastic in Thailand. You wanted to do something about it. You saw that aluminium was a great alternative to plastic. So what's the question then? Well, how do we use aluminium to reduce plastic consumption? Or was it the water concept first?
I think that, I always say to people that purpose-led businesses are super important. I think that the first step was, what's going on in the ocean at the moment? Because everything for the wildlife and, all the marine life, this is horrendous. All of the plastic going onto landfill, killing a lot of marine life. That was the first thought. The second thought was, we weren't scientists. We couldn't just create a material that just disintegrated into thin air. That doesn't exist. If we had done the research and saw the Tetra Pak, the cartons, or there was another material out there, we would have pivoted into that. But the idea was never around canned water. The idea was, how do we solve the problem in the ocean and why is this happening? And once we saw that plastic, it can never infinitely become another plastic bottle. It might be able to become a plastic bottle 3 or 4 times, but then it will become a shoelace or a park bench. But how many park benches do we need? We'll just end up with more and more and more and more plastic. There's no end goal apart from just plastic that was made hundreds of years ago. So once we stumbled on the aluminium piece, straight away we were like, okay, Aluminium's infinitely recyclable. 75% of all aluminium produced in the 1800s is just still in circulation. If the recycling rate of aluminium is enormous compared to plastic, if everyone drank out of aluminium, even though from an energy perspective, it can cause problems, and they are working on that, but so does any material. Even if it's a reusable flask, it still takes energy. But it would definitely be better for the oceans and stop all the plastic going into the oceans, because it has an intrinsic value where people are basically incentivized to collect the aluminium, recycle it, and then it will just be back on the shelf within 60 days.
And so when you think about this now, because obviously Cano Water champions authenticity and a purpose beyond sustainability, why have you felt that that is so important, and how have you translated that mission into a consumer-friendly message that you've delivered?
That's something that's super important to us as founders. I see a lot of people now, whether it be competitors or other brands in different categories, manufacturing ideas. They've either copied someone or they've taken inspiration, or it's really got to come from the heart. I've never been a believer really in just sort of seeing what someone else is doing and just taking their idea, because there's not a lot of authenticity in it. And if I'm waking up every day to concentrate on saying it's got to mean a lot to myself, that's just me personally. I am completely obsessed and addicted with what I do on a daily basis from the purpose element. We have learned really in the past 10 years that the sustainability aspect just can't be the bill and end of it all. It just can't. People have a lot of sustainability fatigue. Everyone's getting bored of hearing the same old rubbish, like, oh, this is sustainable, that's sustainable. 90% of the stuff that we hear is all rubbish. Excuse the pun. Brands protecting their profits, and we talk about it all the time. We're a brand that is very much purpose before profit. Obviously, we're a business. We want to make money, but at the same time, it's ingrained in the culture and the DNA of Cano Water that we're a founder-led business, and sustainability and purpose, authenticity all sits at the forefront of the business. But at the same time, that isn't what's going to carry the brand. So the early days, it was very much everything was about the sustainability angle. One thing that I haven't mentioned is that, yeah, we wanted to create a sustainable brand that is good for the planet. But at the same time, the reason the three of us are best friends is all through common interests, just culture in general. And I think that, whether it be me as a DJ and as an artist, I studied art, completely obsessed with street art. Harry, my co-founder, also very, very obsessed with the urban world of music, skateboarding, graffiti when we were younger and stuff like that. So I think that these are the things that very much brought us together, but also we were like, we want to create a really, really cool brand. We could have just put blue mountains and blue water all over the can, and that's what everyone else would do. We were never going to do that. We want to create a brand that is the apple of water. Someone actually said the other day, Cano Water is the equinox of water. And it's like, that's like music to our ears, because that is exactly what Cano Water is. The places that you'll find Cano Water, the F1, the big hotels, Virgin Atlantic. If you went to Apple's head office, you'll find Cano Water. These are the types of places that Cano Water lives, because that's what it looks and it feels like.
But have you ever found yourself or your partners making commercial decisions that has gone against the values or the principles or the purpose of the business? Or have you managed to sustain and hold that line?
It's been a bit of a detriment of the business of how on the sustainability perspective we have had to make real big decisions. There was an opportunity a few years ago where we could have done a mechanic in one of the largest retailers in the country, and it would have been an incredible mechanic. And the mechanic is that if you buy a Cano Water, we will remove a plastic bottle from the ocean. And it was a really, really good mechanic. And when I actually looked at it, I actually went down a massive rabbit hole, and basically this isn't sustainable at all, because the plastic that we would be removing would end up basically going back into the ocean anyway. So when they say recycled plastic, and everything's recycled plastic, whether it be your shoes or this or that, it just doesn't matter. That plastic is still going to be here, and when your shoes get chucked away, that's the problem with a lot of this stuff. It isn't infinitely recyclable. So I made a decision to pull that and that would have been an activation, a mechanic, a campaign that would have been commercially viable, and we could have done it, and it would have got a lot of eyeballs and a lot of people buying Cano. But what it would have done in the end, I think, is it would have gone against everything that we believe in, which is we need to actually stop the plastic tap. We're making 1 million plastic bottles a minute. It's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And all the biggest companies in the world can try and divert away from it, but it's not getting any better. And actually something that happened yesterday that's really exciting is that the White House passed a bill yesterday that by 2035 they're going to be doing a lot more around their plastic consumption. So the messaging's out there, but we've got to do better.
Part of this, you said as well, you were talking, again, this challenge between being purpose-led and obviously balancing passion with business needs. You've shifted production to the UK to slash your carbon footprint. Was that solely driven by that agenda, or to look also to bring costs down in any way? I mean, what drove that decision to bring production to the UK?
So it hasn't actually done much from a cost perspective, in all honesty, which is, sounds surprising. As we all know, whether it be inflation or interest rates, it's massively impacted businesses, especially, businesses that have very tight margins. So aluminium, as mentioned before, is a commodity. It's got a value. So it isn't a cheap product like a plastic bottle, which is very much a false economy. The move has been something that we've wanted to do since day one. The Austrians were the only people in the world. Austria was where we were filling Cano. The only people in the world that would put water in a can at the time. No one believed in it. No one thought it would ever really be something that would take off. Over the past sort of like 4 years, other brands have been doing it. It's actually helped us because it's created a category that we were the only people in. And through that, it's created obviously huge demand. So all of the co-packers and all the fillers in the world have seen that. They're seeing it the most because they're in the industry. So that enabled us to gain some interest for the UK to fill our water in the UK, which is something that, as mentioned, we've been trying for nearly 10 years to do and couldn't do it because it was too expensive. We were actually getting too big. And even if there were small fillers, they couldn't deal with the infrastructure and the amount of cans that we were filling. So all of these different hurdles would pop up. Honestly, every single month, there would always be a hurdle. And very, very fortunately, now creating the category and the demand, there are people and capacity and capabilities in the UK to fill water in a can. It's cheaper in Austria for us, but we're bringing our production to the UK because it's better. And that's the same with our outer packs on our 24 packs. We always have plastic outer packs. We've now got cardboard. That is marginally more expensive, but we've got a saying at Cano Water, it might cost more, but it doesn't cost the earth.
So listen, let's talk about you now. You've gone from events, marketing and sales, DJing, which you're still doing, obviously very successfully, to being the CEO of a globally recognized brand now, which is amazing. And it's a fantastic journey. What are some of the key learnings and challenges that you faced on your journey, both as an individual, but also as a business, from startup to where you are today?
I very much started Cano Water with little to no experience. So, as mentioned before, I ran an events company. We did some great stuff, but it was nothing like this. I was always meant for brand building and getting the message out there and marketing. Had no sales experience whatsoever, no operations experience. I'm really, really not the guy to go to for any finance advice or knowledge. But what I am and what I've always been willing to learn and always been willing to go out of my comfort zone. And I think that is something that I have always been very, very good at. I speak to a lot of people. They want to get from A to Z, but they won't take all the risks to get there. I think that in my Cano journey from where I started to now, that, I could never have been a CEO ever. I never saw that in my plan. I think that the reason I am CEO today and the way that I've got here is because I've jumped into every single seat possible willingly. I'm not the best person at operations or the best person at sales or the best person at marketing, but I am the guy that will go in, learn as much as possible, make myself unreplaceable. I've always been like that. That's just me as a person. I've got addictive tendencies and I've got severe ADHD. And I think through those, what I would have said 10 years ago were my weak points, my superpowers now, and it enables me to see things differently to other people. From a personal perspective, I've become a lot more resilient. I go out of my comfort zone every single day of the week. I get thrown in at the deep end and I will never say no. I always want to learn more. And I think through that, it's enabled me to grow. So the person I was then to the person I am now is a completely different person. I couldn't have had this conversation 4 or 5 years ago. And 90% of the things that I do today, whether it be sitting in front of an investor or, a very, very large corporate customer, I wouldn't have been able to have done that. It is really, really tough, especially in the economy that we live in, when you've got competition coming and trying to blow you out the market, when you've got huge overheads or you've got to navigate things that you just can't control. As a CEO, there's no one else that is going to tell me what to do. I've got to work it out. It's those things that are tough. I think that growing a business is genuinely different, very, very difficult. And I don't think a lot of people understand that before they go into it. And I think that you have to be very thick-skinned and resilient. And every single day is a roller coaster, every single day. And listen, there are businesses out there that don't have that. And, they skip through life through a daisy field. And it's been really, 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 really tough. And it continues to be tough. Do you know what? The bigger we get, the harder it gets. That's mainly because a business like ours, there's so many different hats that people have to wear and things cost a lot of money. You've got stock and there's so many moving parts that what is super important is getting the right people around. For a business like this, it's so important to have the right people around you, because I can't do it myself and I'll be an idiot to think that I could.
Who are some of the leaders or mentors that inspired you on your entrepreneurial journey? Who do you look to as a point of reference? Do you have any coaches or mentors that support you now? How does that work?
Yeah, so I've got amazing people in the team. I've got my COO, Dean, who I've got an amazing relationship with. His background is in banking and insurance, and he is someone from a business perspective that he excels in my weaknesses. He doesn't excel in my strengths. My chairman, Stefan Orlowski, who's the ex-president of Heineken, absolute mentor, complete legend, has very, very much been a pivotal part of my journey. And also, to be honest with you, most of our investors and our board, and also just the team. So I have got an amazing network around me. But funny enough, and I always get this question, who is my biggest inspiration? And it's my dad. My dad hasn't been part of the Cano journey at all. But my dad has taught me two things in life. One is values. How can you still be happy? How can you be the richest man in the world with nothing? I've just had a beautiful baby daughter, and he's going home every night, even after a really terrible day, but just feeling immensely grateful for what I've got. Because business is one thing, but then there's things outside of business, like my health and my family, that are just beyond important. And that very much came from my dad. I speak to so many entrepreneurs that are just in full burnout. They've got no balance. They're not concentrating on anything else apart from that end goal at the business. And it impacts them in every other part in life. I've learned from my dad that isn't what life's all about. And I've met so many people that have regretted that later in life. And then the other thing, just my dad's work ethic of hard work as an entrepreneur and businessman. And I'm very, very, very like him, personable person and being nice to people and building really, really key business relationships, which my dad is phenomenal at. Whenever I get that question, I always say that my dad is my biggest inspiration.
Does he know that? Have you ever told him that?
I've told him that. He knows.
Interestingly, the cans themselves underwent a redesign last year. What were the marketing goals? What was the aim of the update? And have you achieved that in your marketing strategy?
A lot of brands obviously go through a rebrand, and we call it a refresh. And when you start a business, very rarely does the business go down the route of it intended to be. There's been loads of times where we have pivoted away from certain things. When we started Cano Water, there were hundreds of ideas that we never did, and there were loads of things we did that didn't work. And I think that one of the most important things is to learn, and we learned a lot about our first design. People found it hard to read the logo. No one was reading the word Cano. If anyone's seen our old logo, it was very, very small. It was on its side, so people would have to tilt their head to read the logo and all these things. And one of the reasons that was is because the first 3-4 years, we had to tell people that this was a can of water. So we made water bigger than Cano. And in the end, we realized that actually that was at the detriment of the brand. People thought that we were called water or still spring water. So we wanted to make more of a song and dance about the umbrella, which is actually, it's Cano drinks. Cano water is just a function of Cano drinks. We get copied a lot by a lot of brands, and we needed to really, really sort of bring in some new brand assets. So at the top of our cans, we've now got waves on the still, and we've got dots on the sparkling, and through our logo, there's a wave on the undertone of the logo, and there's actually like a bit of a hidden Easter egg in the A, where the A has a water drop in. These little things that we've been working on, and my business partner Perry, who is my best friend, it has always been, since we were kids, the most phenomenal graphic designer. So very fortunate to have Perry as part of the DNA of the business. And it's something we wanted to do for a long time, but it just wasn't the right time. And for America, launching in LA.
How's the US launch going now? How's that been over the last few months?
Listen, I've been back and forth to the US. It's an absolutely enormous territory. The world is a different place to what it was a few years ago. Money isn't easy to find. The US is a beast. And I've seen brands try and tackle the US and fall by the wayside very, very quickly. Walking before running is super important. So we're doing a proof of concept in California. It's going really well. We're seeing us win some really nice independent stores. We're getting some good rate of sale on the shelves. We're doing a really, really big piece of work at the moment on our brand strategy and what we talk about and what we look like. So there's some really exciting things going on. But at the same time, we're not going all guns blazing, because over the past 10 years, we've all seen it. Look at WeWork as an example, really, really strong brand, spending money left, right, and center like there's no tomorrow. Everyone's like, oh my God, WeWork are the best, WeWork are the best. And then it just overnight, the collapse. And I've seen that with a load of brands over the past 10 years. You're obviously a little bit older than me, Nick. You've probably seen it probably much more than I have. And Dean, my COO, was there for the collapse of Lehman Brothers. You can get very, very, very carried away in this kind of business with getting so completely obsessed with trying to build the biggest brand in the world. And if you're spending so much money and you're not reaping the return, one day you're on the shelf and the next day no one's talking about you ever again. And I think that's the thing that in America can happen very quickly. People's eyes get bigger than their belly. You're just one of hundreds of thousands of brands. You're not special. You've got to not forget that, because if you think that you're the best, you'll actually get overtaken very, very, very quickly by someone like Cano Water's done with many brands in the UK. People saw us come in and were like, yeah, they won't be around in 2-3 years' time. And they were wrong. So we've also got to have that mentality of how do we stay relevant and just also be realistic, especially about the US.
Where do you want to see yourself and the business over the next 10 years? What are the goals you're looking to achieve?
There's some really exciting conversations going on at the moment. There's some talk around some new product development. The US is a very big part of the future of Cano Water. We've just ventured into Ireland at the moment, which is really exciting. We're going to be doing some work there. But it's very much doing what we're doing, but better. 3-4 years ago, all the biggest tech companies, everyone was raising hundreds of millions of dollars. Investors were just putting their hands in their pocket and they didn't really care about losing it, because sort of spread betting across all the tech companies, and the same thing was happening a lot in the food and drink world. That's not happening anymore. So is survival obviously a lot more important now? And I'm already seeing it in a lot of places. These companies that have spent so much money, it's now impossible for them to recoup that back within the economy that they're in, and there's no financial or viable route for them.
And so are you an optimist?
Yeah, I am. I am an optimist. I am. If I think about the Cano journey, there's been a million hurdles. Genuinely, it's just crazy. We're still here at the end of the day and we've got over them. But the most important thing is also being a realist.
What is the one piece of advice you would give yourself that would help you quicker 10 years ago?
Small things like, we talk about mentors, probably ask for help more, probably network a little bit more in the early days and build more relationships. I do think because we were building a disruptive brand, it was difficult to network at the beginning because no one really believed in it. And one of the biggest judgments that I have for the UK public is that they're very, very apprehensive in believing new ideas. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that stops the UK economy from being the US. If you look at all of the biggest companies like the Airbnbs of the world and the Ubers, these are all stupid ideas that turn into great ideas. Like even if you look at Deliveroo, it wasn't started by an Englishman, because my experience is that people in the UK don't really believe in disruptive new ideas. If I look back at the people that I spoke to and the people that I went to from a mentor and a coaching perspective, there wasn't a lot of belief. That's one thing. But also like the ability to say no. Like in the early days, I would say yes to absolutely everything. And I think that one of the things that I have very much learned about business is that you have to stick to your guns. You have to believe in what you believe in. There wasn't a lot of that. There was always a lot of yeses, a lot of yeses. So, and that was from being young.
Well, look, listen, it's been a journey, and what an amazing journey, and what an incredible story. And I can't tell you how much we wish you and Cano Water every success going forward. There is zero doubt from my side that it won't continue to be successful, especially with the US now. Josh, thanks for joining me today. It's been great having this conversation. Fantastic insight. And look forward to my next can of Cano Water.
Always. Thank you.
Pleasure. Speak to you soon.